My friends, welcome Robert Baker to the show. As you know, we've been doing these interviews here in the whole quarantine edition bit here. And Robert Baker is an amazing guitar player, an amazing dude, an amazing teacher who I've wanted to get to know more here recently. So this is a perfect opportunity for us to get to know him. Robert, welcome. How are you doing, my friend?
Dude, doing great, and likewise on everything that you said about me. I've been
Oh,
a
thank you,
fan, a
man.
fan of yours for many years.
Oh, so kind, man. And congratulations, by the way, you just hit over 300,000, yeah, on YouTube.
Yeah, it seems crazy
Amazing.
to me.
Yeah, it feels good to hit new levels. I don't know why, but it does.
Yeah, new levels. I'm like, wow, people put up with me for quite a while now. So
Yeah, no, you're an amazing player, dude. You're a joy to watch. I really appreciate your attention to detail, and you're just it's like watching just like a fine conversation. You're an
nice.
amazing guitar player.
Oh,
I really mean that. So,
thank you.
so thank you for that, and thank you for your teaching too. You also have a passion, such a passion for students. So I
Yeah,
wanted to, if you don't mind, what I wanted to do to start off is I wanted you to give us a brief history, number one, of your musical life, where you came from and how you got to where you are today. Because I think a lot of people just think that guitar players and guitar teachers and gurus and what have you are just born, and obviously they're not. So I always like to tell the backstory. Can you tell us a bit about how you got to where you're at?
yeah, okay, yeah. Well, I started playing my originally my dad he played guitar many years before me, but he played me a Van Halen song one day. I was like obsessed with the band Creed, if you remember them. And he was just like, he's this big Southern dude, and he's like, boy, let me play you some real music. And he puts in 1984 and puts on Hot for Teacher. And I just remember hearing like that big pick slide and then the tab. I'm like, what is that? He's like, that's Eddie Van Halen, boy. And then I was just like, what is, he's like, he's a guitar player. And then I was just like, from there, I'm like, that's crazy. So,
That's
15 years later, still can't play Van Halen right.
right,
But
right.
yeah, so it was that. And
Hey,
then, it was I enjoyed showing my friends, like when I would learn new stuff, I would just kind of like, I'm like, oh yeah, this is how like Crazy Train goes, or whatever it was. And then
yeah.
I was supposed to go out to California. I was going to go to GIT for college,
Did
and
you?
I got offered a job teaching at a local shop in the town we used to live in. And I was like, well, that's kind of what I wanted to do anyways. So I pursued that, and right at that time was when I went to a tech school for media.
Now hold on. How old were you when you first started playing?
I was like 15, so I was kind of like
Okay.
late, I guess,
Yeah.
in it all. So yeah, so I started when I was 15, and then I went to a tech school for media communications, and then this thing called YouTube had come out, and I was like, this is kind of cool, and I just made like dumb videos of me playing guitar at first, and then I was like, this is actually like really fun, and then it just kind of like grew from there, and then I guess I started teaching, and then
Yeah.
here we are today, getting interviewed by Eric.
Yes. No, I love that. So you appreciate it's like when I watch you play, you're obviously a guitar player's guitar player. Like you love what you're doing, but
Yeah.
you also, I can see it when you're teaching. You find passion in teaching, which not everybody does. There's some great guitar players out there. Did you ask them to show you what it is? Like, how did you get there? They'll be like, man, I just don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
but you have a passion for that. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, I love I love teaching. I did it like in-person teaching, where I would have like 50, 60 students a week. Like that was like my full-time thing for years. I did it for 5 or 6 years. And I even taught at a school, like classes of people,
Hmm.
like younger kids and stuff. And I did that for a year, and then I kind of transitioned to Skype when I discovered Skype was a thing. And I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting because I can teach people literally all around the world. Because by that time I
Right.
was doing YouTube and then Skype. I was like, it kind of makes sense. And eventually I did Skype for a while, for like 3 or 4 years, just no in person. And then just like really
And just out
focused
of
on,
interest, out of
yeah,
interest from one teacher to another, how many folks were you teaching on Skype per week?
a lot. I taught, eventually I said I stopped teaching in person. So I taught Monday through Saturday from like 2 to 8 every single day. And I did 30-minute lessons. So it was,
Wow.
yeah. So
Wow.
it
Because
was,
I've taught Skype before, and that's a whole nother thing. It's a whole nother. it's harder because you're not with the student.
Yeah.
So interesting. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so it was a lot, but I'm sure you can relate too. I love teaching, but it's like when you teach that much, it mentally just like you're
Drained.
just done at the end of the day. Like it's like I haven't done anything but sit here all day. I'm just exhausted. So
Yes.
eventually, like, it transitioned to YouTube doing that and then doing like guitar courses and that kind of thing. So it was kind of like a natural progression each step of the way. But
Yeah.
I still, love teaching and doing all that stuff.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I've done some Skype lessons myself, but like I said, I applaud you for that, because just to keep up with that, it's one thing when students are coming in and they're physically there and what have you, but the commitment level of folks on Skype, sometimes it's not the same thing unless they're paying ahead of time and what have you. So
yeah, like I said, I kind of learned, I had to have them pay ahead of time. One nice thing I found with Skype is that they were typically more advanced players. Yes. So like in person, you got a lot more beginner students, and then on Skype, it was way more intermediate people who wanted to learn like some theory stuff. I'm like, oh, this is kind of a change of pace from what I normally teach. So,
well, part of my philosophy is understanding the why. Like, why is it that you want to play? For you heard. I mean, Creed would be probably your catalyst to, oh wow, music, and then Van Halen and then the door was open, and then it's oh my God, all these other amazing players.
Yeah.
But at some point you have to go, well, gosh, am I going to do this as a career or what have you? And to me, like, knowing what that why is, which you've clearly answered with teaching, because you've been doing it for so long now. Teaching is a huge part of your why. Do you have any philosophies like that when you're teaching? Is that something that you find would help with direction? Because, people ask these broad questions like, how am I supposed to practice and what have you? Do you find that to be a thing with your students that helps you direct them to where they go, and it helps them direct themselves where they should be going?
Yeah. It was never kind of like, some people like to have a very strict way of teaching and like it kind of like make the student fit the mold into it. But like you said, each student would ask like, how do I practice this? How do I do this? And, you just kind of, you adapt it to each student. And it's like I said, you just have to kind of figure out like, you would have different students of different levels. Like, oh, this person just like wants to sit on their back porch and, play some chords or whatever it is. And, so, you don't force those people to like learn how to play the diminished scale or something like that. If that's your question, if I'm off,
yes, that's exactly it.
Yeah. So, as the teacher, you kind of like, you can gauge and figure out like how it was. And then, you kind of like introduce a lot of that new stuff to them. And then sometimes the people who didn't even know they wanted to learn that were like, oh, that's really fascinating. You show them the major scale and all of a sudden they're like, well, what else does this do? And, and then there's that little spark of like interest. And all of a sudden now they're like, well, I really want to learn scales and chords and, all these different things. So I think it's just, each person has that different why to them. And then you just kind of have to adapt and build off of whatever their strengths are.
Indeed. Do you have a way to conjure that out of students if they don't know what it is that their why is?
Yeah, well, we just kind of like, the biggest thing is just figuring out like what made you even want to play guitar at all. I think that's like the ultimate like gateway into it, because the biggest thing that 99% of people want to start playing guitar is because of music. Some music somewhere made you feel something, and you're like, I want to be able to do that. For me, it was Van Halen, but for someone else, it could be John Mayer or, a lot of these more modern kind of guitar heroes.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it right on the head. I think a lot of people, they overthink that process, or they overthink, the whole, like, what is my why? And it's like, what do you like? And I try to tell folks all the time, like, you've got to ask that question, what do I like? Because that's going to get you there. You're like, well, I don't really care to sit on a porch. I want to rock in front of many, many people. Okay, well, that's a different skill set. Or I don't want to play in front of anybody. I want to be in the studio. Totally different skill set. So now you specialize, like, would you say that your forte is rock? blues, and you've got some stellar like technique wise, you're a great player as well, which I find sometimes, like if I think about a player who has great technique, um, sometimes it can involve a lack of passion because it almost seems like they're focusing on technique so much that their passion is lost. But you have a great hybrid of the two, where you're very passionate, but your technique is spot on. Would you say that rock is your thing and your forte?
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if the playing is good or not, but I
Yes,
definitely think that
it's
rock
great.
is like where it's all at. Like I'm sure like with you, it's like I love listening to all the different genres, and it's like anything I take from blues or jazz or funk, it's
Hmm.
all just a means to like add it back to rock. It all comes back to
Right.
rock, and you just have like little elements of other stuff, it kind of tucked away inside of it because one of the things I always thought was cool that a lot of other genres don't have the freedom of it. Rock, you can do literally anything. You can have a jazz
Hmm.
breakdown in the middle of a rock song, but it's like
Yeah.
you can't have a rock breakdown in a jazz song. Like they would
Nope.
never go for that. But like rock, it's
You
just
can't
so
bend a string in jazz.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, there's so many like limitations to other music, and
Yeah.
rock is just this big melting pot of it all. So it's just like
Yes.
yeah, take your favorite parts of all the other ones and bring it back home basically.
Yeah, and I've noticed with your playing, I can hear jazz influences and what have you in your playing. I mean, like if I would say who is Robert Baker, like pick a genre, and you can only pick one, I would say rock. But I mean, I hear blues and I hear jazz in your playing as well. How do you come about? Like, how do you think about that, and how do you integrate that so seamlessly? Are you thinking? Are you more of an ear player, or do you study the behind the scenes stuff? Okay, like this is a seventh chord. This is a dominant seventh chord, so I know I could use the mixolydian. Are you that kind of thinker, or are you more just like, man, my ear leads me where to go, or mixture of both, or what?
I think it's probably more ear than anything, but I still spend a lot of time trying to understand like the other side of it too. Like I just did a song for a video, and I was like playing it, I could kind of hear that I'm like, oh, this is like totally Mixolydian. Like I wasn't like thinking in terms of like, oh, this chord progression is Mixolydian. After I like thought about it, I'm like, oh, it totally is. But it was just like I heard it, and I'm like, this just sounds like it'd be Mixolydian. And as soon as I played over top of it, I'm like, oh, it's totally Mixolydian. So,
Yeah,
but that was more of like my ear telling me that, oh, this is where this just sounds like this kind of vibe. And then when I looked at it, I'm like, oh, okay, well, it does have a kind of like a proper chord progression for that in there. So a lot of times, like most of my theory is all pentatonic,
mm-hmm.
with the modes kind of laid on top of it. But I always tell people it's like you create your own scale, in your mind, like all these little things you take. I'm like, oh, I love that note from that scale or that note from this one, and
Right.
then I just add it to the pentatonic scale. Is really what it all comes down to for me.
Yeah,
And
I love that you say that because whenever I'm talking, when students are asking me about modes, uh, the way that I describe them, I almost feel like they think that I'm skirting around the issue. But really, when it comes down to it, I say 99% of the time you're playing major or minor.
yeah,
You're going to pull in a note here and there from something, but if you're calling that a mode, and now you're thinking in the modal scale, it's like I don't. Most players don't think about that. They just go for that note because if it's in a minor chord progression has a major third in it, it's like now you're going to sharpen that
yeah.
seven instead of have that the flat seven in there.
Yeah. A lot of it, like you said, that's why I always tell people. I said, there's only two notes different in your pentatonic scale. Think about it. Pentatonic's five, major scale
Yeah,
seven. Yeah, like there's
yeah,
two notes separating it, and like I said, I always just relate stuff back to what I already know. So don't know if it's a good strategy to do that or not, but it's like, oh, okay, if we're playing, you know, D Mixolydian or whatever it is, I'm like, oh, well, that's just G major.
yeah,
That's how I'm viewing it. I'm like, oh, I know G major really well. I just kind of like adapt. I'm like, okay, well, I need to know where the D notes are, and then it's like, okay, it's got
yeah,
the flat seven in there instead of the majors. That kind of
yeah.
stuff, and I just kind of like tweak my knowledge versus trying to like paint this whole new picture of what's D Mixolydian. I'm like, I don't know what that
Yeah.
is, but I know it's G major.
I love that. I love that. I do the same thing, and I think most people do. You know, we're trying to find out what the quickest way from A to B is, and that, in my opinion, is exactly what you're talking about there. So
yeah,
I love that. I love that. Robert, I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but let me ask you this. There's a lot of folks watching who, you know, again, there's a lot, they believe in folklore and they believe in myth and they believe that they have to just be born into this, or that because they're always seeing the end result, you know, you don't, there's not a ton of super hot Instagram guitar players that suck, that people are like, dude, you got to see this guy suck on guitar. It has to be someone that's good. So they're always seeing the end result, right?
Yeah.
And then they automatically assume, well, he's that. And they automatically fill in a bunch of blanks there. But at the end of the day, we know that it has everything to do with practice. But I always tell students, knowing what to practice and knowing what to focus on is so important. Yeah. If you could give me 3 tips for reaching one's potential on the guitar, whether that's psychologically or whether that's you got to know this scale, you got to improvise, or you got to know your whatever. Would you have 3 tips that you could share with us, you think?
Yeah, well, even like what you just said, like I think so much of guitar is like mental. You know, like there's the knowledge aspect of it and just the thousands of hours aspect, but you have to like, you can't let the guitar like defeat you. So you have to be like willing to learn like at all times, you know, like regardless of who you're around. And it's kind of cool because, you know, back in, you know, years ago before YouTube, it was kind of like, you know, you surround yourself with players who are better than you. But it's never been easier on YouTube because you can you can find guys. You know, like I watch a lot of other guys. Like I'm a huge like Sean Tubbs fan, or Tim Pierce, and you know, all these guys. Yes. I'm like they're light years past me, but it's like it's a driving force. I'm like, man, you know, what did he just do there? You know, and then it's like motivation to take it and learn. So I think that'd be the first one. Like you always have to just be willing to learn and just, you know, keep that. Whatever you're wanting to sound like or whatever you enjoy, just make sure it's around you as much as possible. So
yes, so surround yourself with the things that you want to do and be willing to learn. That's number 1. Yeah.
Okay. And I think the other one is you have to like seek out new inspiration, because it's never gonna come to you. Like every once in a while, you know, something might randomly play on the radio that you'll be like, oh, that's really cool. But I think if you don't actively like scour the internet or like find, you know, go to the library and just rent, you know, CDs or albums that have cool covers on them. You know, that's how I found Molly Hatchet and, you know, all these other guys. I'm like, oh my God, I love Molly Hatchet. You know, just they cool album covers, you know?
Yes.
Yeah. And you know, so I think like you can't sit and wait on the inspiration to find you, because it's just not the way that it works, you know, 99% of the time. So you've got to be hunting always. So
indeed, I love that. So the word there is actively searching to be inspired. I think you nailed it right on the head. I've said that to students before too. It's like inspiration oftentimes does not come to visit you like a haunting. You've got to go find it. You've got to search for it, and then there it is. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I guess the third one, it's kind of like just it's like put music first. You know, like make sure that whatever you're doing, you know, like if you're working on scales, I just did a video about this earlier. I was kind of explaining how like when I would practice scales and all that kind of stuff, I didn't just play them over, you know, dead air with nothing. I would put on droning tracks, or, you know, I would create my own backing track just to hear it for music. You know, like the music side of it is so crucial, because if you learn it like a scale, you're going to play it like a scale, you know.
Beautiful. I love that you said that.
Yeah. So, you know, even just playing the scale straight through it, you know, over top of something, you can't help but play it differently. It's inevitable. So
I love that you said that. I had a video that I did a few years ago that was you're playing your scales wrong, and essentially it was that. It's like you're not necessarily playing them wrong, but the fact that you're just playing them rote. It's like, you're going to learn them, but like that's not musical. So like, let's get them in a song. So I love that you said that.
Yeah, because then, you know, no one ever wants to like, man, did you hear that guy playing that pentatonic scale? Like, you know, it's like you know, no one's ever talking about that guy.
Yes, so, I love it. Those are all really good bits, man. I I appreciate that. I appreciate your zeal for the instrument and your passion to help others, because I don't know, to me that that makes such a great community. And I feel like especially our YouTube community, but it seems like guitar players for the most part, everybody's like, yeah, oh dude, show me that. You know what I mean? That's gone on since the beginning of time. And it's like we share and steal licks from each other all the time. We're like, yeah, dude, that's amazing, you know?
Oh yeah. Well, and even like your channel, for example, is built off of it's a positive base. Everything's based off positivity, and it breeds that positivity throughout the channel, through the comment sections, because anyone who has a channel your size, you can't respond to each person who leaves a comment, but luckily you build this community, and then people help out. Like if you don't see a comment, then someone else will, oh no, he did this here, whatever it is. So
yeah, indeed. Well, Robert, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your passion for students. I appreciate that so much. Is there a place specifically that you would like to send folks where they can know more about you? I mean, of course, your YouTube page, but can you go ahead and share some of the places where you would love folks to first meet you online?
Yeah, I'm kind of like a caveman, so I don't know how to do Twitter or TikTok or any of that stuff. So I just have my YouTube and Instagram's pretty much it,
And you've got a great Instagram.
Well, I just like looking at guitar pictures, so so that's all I post. It's just guitar pictures all day.
Oh, they're good. Yeah. And on another interview, we're going to talk about your 335, because that's my next guitar, and that one looks pretty hot. What year is that?
It's fun. It's a 79. So I was just texting Brett Papa about it, because he's borrowing a 335, and I was like, dude, if for rockers, for like rocker guys, you got to look at one of these 335s that I have. It's called a 335 Pro.
Okay.
It's designed for rock guitar players. It's got dirty finger pickups in it.
Okay.
Shorter scale. The whole thing. It's nice. Like it's the 80s rockers 335. So
nice. Okay, I'll have to check that out then.
Yeah, it's the one.
Was not aware of that.
Yeah, see, it's a secret. No, don't tell anyone.
we will not tell anybody. Robert, thank you again, buddy. Let's do this again. And next time you're in Nashville, please, will you come by the studio, because I want to play.
Yeah, man. I will. Well, I was supposed to be down there, but obviously things kind of got derailed a little bit. But I'll be down there ASAP. So
indeed, beautiful. Robert, thank you so much, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.